I've got two problems up here on the board. Both of them are taken from your book. This is number 11, which is an assigned homework problem. This is number 56. It's an even number that I didn't assign. That's because this one's the graph of a rational function, and there were only two of those assigned in the homework. So I wanted to leave those for you guys to try on your own, but there were more of these graphs of polynomial functions, and I thought we'd work through this one together, and that way you're getting a jump start on the homework. Okay. Now, we've mentioned that when we're solving these inequalities, it's very related to that step when we're graphing either a polynomial or a rational function, and we're trying to figure out the intervals over which the function is positive or negative. We're basically answering the same question. So here, with these questions, rather than being given a formula and asked to solve an inequality algebraically, we're being given a graph and asked to solve things graphically. Okay. Each of these questions is 4 parts. Each of these functions is called f of x. We're just recycling that name. And you're asked to solve the inequality f of x less than 0, less than or equal to 0, greater than 0, and greater than or equal to 0. Although we haven't worked through one of these together, I'm going to suggest that you pause the video and try to work these out on your own. I did purposely choose, even though this isn't one of the assigned homework problems, it is still a problem from your textbook, so that if you want to have the picture in your textbook rather than having to copy the graph from the video, you can do that. Okay. And I will just point out that points that appear to have integer coordinates do have integer coordinates here. Okay. So you should be able to read out the answers to these from the graph. Give that a shot, then tune back in. I think what I'm going to do for both of these, although it's not strictly necessary to answer the questions, is just draw a number line to encode my answers. So if we work with number 11 here, the places where my function is equal to 0, that's going to be where we're actually on the x-axis. So those are my two x-intercepts, and I can see that those are at 0 and at 3. And I'm just going to put a filled-in point here to say that we're equal to 0 at that point. Now, obviously, for some of these problems, I'm not going to include those points, and for other problems, I will include those. But I'm putting a filled-in point for where it's equal to 0, because when I get to number 56, which is a rational function, I'm going to have some places where the function is 0 and other places where the function is undefined. And so I'm going to reserve an open point for the places where it's undefined. Okay, now that divides this number line into 3 sections, and that divides this graph into 3 sections. To the left of 0, I can see my function is up here. It's positive. Between 0 and 3, we're looking at this portion of the graph. That's negative. And to the right of 3, this portion of the graph, that's going to be negative again. Okay. All right. So for part A, where is f of x less than 0? I'm just going to write my answers over here. Okay. Where is it less than 0? That would be where it's negative. And since this is a strict inequality, we would not include the places where it's 0. So that would be 0, 3, union 3, infinity. So it's negative almost from 0 on, but that one place where it's actually equal to 0 isn't included. Now, when we're asked where it's less than or equal to 0, we now want to include these 2 points. And if I'm including 3, there's now no need to break that up into 2 separate intervals. So we're going to be less than or equal to 0 from 0 to infinity. That's including 0, so I put a bracket there. And you'll notice that includes 3, because 3 is between 0 and infinity. All right, where is the function positive? That's part C. Now we're looking for where it's strictly positive, so that won't include the end point of that interval. So that's going to be just from negative infinity to 0, not including 0. Where is the function bigger than or equal to 0? That's going to be where it's positive and where it's 0, so at those 2 points as well. So that's going to make it negative infinity to 0 with a bracket around the 0, union. Now that's just a single point, not an actual interval. So remember, when we have a single point, we just put that in set braces. So this would be my answers to number 11. Let me just erase that, and then we'll work through 56. Okay, so the same 4 questions. Again, I think I'm going to just look at a number line where I can record my information. So here's my x-axis right here, and I can see we touch the x-axis at negative 2. That's a place where the function is actually equal to 0. That's the only place where the function is equal to 0, but the function is undefined where we have our vertical asymptote. So at 2, I'm going to just put an open circle. So that's my way of encoding. We equal 0 here. We're not defined at all here. So 2 won't be included in any of my intervals. Those are the only places where my function can change sign. So that divides the number line, and that divides the graph into 3 sections. So to the left of negative 2, we're looking to the left here. You can see we're below the x-axis, so our function is negative. Between negative 2 and 2, we're looking at this portion of the graph right here. That's above the x-axis, so that's going to be positive. And then to the right of 2, this is the x-axis. We're below it because we're below the horizontal asymptote, which was down at negative 2. So our function is negative there. Okay. All right, again, it's not absolutely necessary to draw this number line, but it gives me a slightly simpler picture to take a look at. And now I can say, okay, where was my function negative? Now, for part A, we're looking at strictly negative, so we're not including negative 2. So that would be negative infinity to negative 2, union 2 to infinity. Where is it less than or equal to 0? That's going to change the answer slightly. We're going to include the negative 2, but we won't include the 2 because the function wasn't defined there. And if it's not defined, it's not positive. For part C, where was our function positive? We're looking here for strictly positive, so we won't include the negative 2. It would be strictly positive between negative 2 and 2. And where was it bigger than or equal to 0? We just modify that by including the negative 2. All right, so these problems, you're sort of given the answer. It's just about reading the graph. But very important to familiarize yourself with that, because it's a question of being able to focus in on, okay, I'm looking at my y values, and are they above the x-axis, making them positive, or below the x-axis, making them negative?